Here at Cali Raised Offroad, getting ready to pick up my Deaver leaf pack, and then I'm gonna go home and get them installed. Hopefully it won't take all day because I have other things I need to do as well. But I'm really excited about the upgrade, so it's gonna help my truck not sag as much in the back when I have the gear inside of it. Here they are. Those things look freaking beefy, man.
Alright, just slide in that spot there.
So now that I'm back home, I'm gonna get this thing jacked up and then start pulling all the tools out I need in order to do this install. But I'm hoping it's gonna take me maybe, sorry, there's a crying baby in the background. I'm hoping this is only gonna take me about 3 hours or less, so we'll see. Everything always takes longer because I film stuff and trying to get the best angles of everything. Right now, the other thing that's gonna also fix, besides the sagging that I have, because I've got this camper shell here, is the leaf springs. They squeak, which is super annoying. I can temporarily fix it by spraying some white lithium grease in the bracket that's rubbing up against the side of the leaf pack, but especially after doing a little bit of just very mild off-roading, the dust will get back in there, dries up all of the lubrication, and then ends up squeaking some more, and it's really obnoxious. So I'm gonna be, I guess, killing two birds with one stone with this upgrade. So something else I forgot to mention was that I'm also gonna be doing the Accutune U-bolt flip kit and the bump stop kit. And I've got that down there that I'm gonna have to unbox. The cool thing about what Accutune gives you in this little package is that koozie, so I'm gonna make that useful right now. The first thing you need to do is to lower your spare tire. This will give you easier access to the bolts at the rear of the leaf pack. I decided to take the whole tire out of the way to give me more room for filming. Put a chock block on at least one tire. So all of this stuff is going to go back there. Grease the insides of the rubber bushings. Insert them into the leaf springs with a dead blow hammer or rubber mallet. Now insert the metal bushings. Jack the rear of the truck from the rear differential. Place jack stands under the frame of your truck. Unfortunately, I couldn't find my tall jack stands anywhere and I was left with these, so I wasn't able to jack the truck up any higher. You want to put another jack stand on the axle here and then carefully lower it as not to stretch your brake lines. For factory wheels, remove your lug nuts with a 21mm socket. With a 17mm wrench, remove the lower shock mount. You might need the assistance of a punch to fully remove the bolt. My shock here was being a little stubborn, so I had to use a pry bar to pull it out. Use a 19mm socket to remove the nuts and washer, and don't forget your bump stop. Ensure that you remember the orientation of the plate after you remove it so you can put it back in the same direction. With a 12mm socket, remove the brake line bracket. I also like to remove the bracket slightly forward of that and then put the bolt back in its place so I don't lose it. And then I'll remove the brake line bracket on the axle as well. Carefully lower your axle to give yourself a couple inches of space between the axle and leaf pack. Keep an eye on your brake lines as you do this. With the 19mm wrench and socket, remove the bolt at the front of the leaf pack. With the pry bar, pull the bolt out. Repeat these steps with the shackle at the rear of the leaf springs. I was finally able to fit my impact driver for the lower bolt. This is an extremely important time to pay attention to the leaf springs. Make sure you don't have any body parts under your truck. The springs can suddenly fall. Rotate the shackle up and then start with the front and then the rear. Rotate the entire leaf pack and be extremely careful not to hit your brake lines. Slowly remove your springs away from the axle. Remove the last bolt and shackle. Don't forget to pick up your hardware and put them in a safe place. I cleaned the shackle in this area with the rag and alcohol before transferring it over to the new leaf springs. Make sure you put the bolt back in the same orientation. Put the washer on and hand tighten the nut. Carefully put the new leaf springs on the axle without hitting your brake lines, and then rotate them up. Align the holes to the bushings and insert your bolt through the mount. Then put on the washer and hand tighten the nut on the back side. Align the shackle to the mount and insert the bolt. Put on the washer and hand tighten the nut. Lift the axle while making sure this center pin is aligned with the hole in the axle. As mentioned, I'll be installing the Accutune bump stop and U-bolt flip kit. Install the U-bolts and ensure that you are clear of the brake lines. I use my impact driver here with a right angle adapter to run the nut down faster. Torque the nuts down to 90 foot-pounds. Accutune recommends that you cut at least half of the remaining threads that are exposed and should not sit higher than the spacer. After cutting the first one, I decided to unbolt everything and take it all to my vise to cut. And then I decided to grind down the cuts and also bevel the edges so that the nuts can screw on easier. After reinstalling the kit, I finally put the bump stop on. With a 19mm socket and wrench, tighten the front mount and then torque the nut to 89 foot-pounds. Do the same thing for the rear upper shackle and then leave the lower shackle bolt loose for now. Install the rear shock into the mount and put the bolt back through. Put the washer on and then torque the nut to 43 foot-pounds with a 19mm socket. Place the front brake line mount back in place and tighten it with a 12mm socket. If you remove the bracket on the axle, bolt it back into place. If you notice here, this brake line is sitting too high on the new leaf springs, creating a lot of tension. The middle of this mounting location seems to be a better position. You could just zip tie the brake line to this area, but if you want to actually mount the bracket, this is what I did. You're going to need an M8 125 by 12mm hex bolt and an M8 lock washer. With an automatic center punch, mark the spot you will be drilling. With your M8 tap, thread the hole by giving it a few turns clockwise and then go back counterclockwise to help clear out some of the metal shavings. Continue until you get through the other side. Clean up the area and threads. Then remount the brake line bracket with a 13mm socket. With a sturdy screwdriver, bend the bracket into a position that gives your brake line the most room to move. Put your wheel back on. With a 21mm socket, torque your lug nuts to 87 foot-pounds in a crisscross pattern. Lower your axle and move the jack to the other side. Repeat the same steps. Here, I jump on the tailgate to help settle in the new springs and bushings. Tighten the lower shackle bolts to 89 foot-pounds with a 19mm socket and wrench. And finally, put your spare tire back into its place. You are done with the install. Okay, so I'm finally done. As usual, it always takes me forever to do these installs because I always quadruple check to make sure that I get everything done properly. And then of course, when I'm trying to film and stuff like that, then it always takes me a lot longer. So let's take a measurement to see if it gave me a little extra lift, and then we'll take it for a drive and see how it feels. Okay, moment of truth. And we are at 38.5 just about. So before we were at 37.25, and it gave us an extra 1.25 inches. And then let's go take it for a drive. Okay, so last night I did end up going out to test drive the truck after the install, but it ended up being way too dark, so I'm gonna redo it. The first thing I tested out was the squeak, because as I was mentioning earlier in the video, it did have a squeak in it, and it was rubbing against the one of the brackets, and I was able to temporarily fix it, but it quickly came back with two different methods. Number one was taking the bolt and the sleeve out of that bracket and then bending that one side that was making contact, and then bending it back not as much, and then bolting it back up. And it fixed the problem, but then over time it came back, and it came back maybe in like a few days. And then I also sprayed white lithium grease on all the contact points there, and same thing. It would go away for a little bit and then it came right back. And then especially if I were to do that fix and then go take it on a trail, that dust would get in there and then that lubrication wouldn't do its job. So it was just an annoying thing to be able to hear every time I drove. I'd go over speed bumps, or when I'm at a complete stop and then I hit the gas to drive when the light turns green, I would hear it, and it was just really obnoxious. So what I'm gonna do right now is I'm gonna drive into this parking lot here. It's got a handful of speed bumps, but immediately going out of the driveway, coming down and then hitting a little bit of that dip before entering the street, I could already notice that the back end is just a touch stiffer. And I would say it's like, I don't know, like 15% stiffer or something like that. It's hard for me to actually quantify, but it's a very small amount. And what I would say is that it's only noticeable because I know that I did the install and I expect for it to be stiff, so I'm looking out for it. If someone were to not tell me at all that they were doing this mod to my truck, which would be really awesome, by the way, and just did it, and then I got in the car or I got in the truck and drove, I don't think I would really notice it. The other thing that I noticed too is if I were to compare the front to the rear when I'm running over curbs, and or not curbs, but But speed bumps, let me do it one more time over here. There's a couple, like this young couple making out in front of everybody over here in front of the store. Pay attention to the time it takes to recover from the speed bump. So I'm gonna go over this one right here at a, what am I going at, like 5 miles an hour maybe, and 3. All right, so here's the front. See how it kind of bumps? And this one, it's hard to tell on the video, but I can feel it, that the front, you know, kind of comes down off of the speed bump, and then it bounces maybe, you know, halfway up a little bit from, you know, the compression, and then recovers, where the back one doesn't bounce as much. So the recovery time is way faster. I'm gonna do it one more time here. Let's go at 5 miles an hour so you guys can see it a little more obvious. Here's 5 miles an hour, front, rear. So I don't know if you guys can tell the difference there, but you know, the back came up, bam, comes up, and then it just stops. So I won't be able to test out the bump stops until I go off-roading, and then, you know, put a GoPro on it so that way I can actually see the compression and see if it you know, if it makes contact with the bump stops or not. But so far I'm really happy with this. But the stage ones are perfect for me because my average daily load is under 300 pounds. The camper shell is 220 pounds-ish. I don't think it's any heavier than that. And then I don't really carry a ton of gear. I've got some camping equipment in the back that lives in the back of my truck. And the reason why I do that is because it just makes life a little easier, that whenever I decide that I just want to do a quick overnighter somewhere, that all my stuff is already in there. All I have to do is just go and get food and throw it in a cooler with some ice, and I'm set. I'm gonna go into another parking lot, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna hit speed bumps coming at an angle where I have one wheel run over it first and then the other one, and that's gonna cause my truck to rock a little bit more. That way I can demonstrate how fast the back recovers with these leaf springs. Let me see here. Actually, I'll just go right back into the same one. Well, so I'm gonna go left wheel first, driver's side. All right, so that one came a little bit of an awkward. Let me see if I can go in an angle with this one. There's the front. Just another angle. Yeah, so hopefully you guys can notice the difference there, but the back just takes a little bit less time to recover. The rear used to act like the front, where the rear was a little softer, and especially with added gear, and all I did was, you know, of course, just the added leaves and then the OEM leaf pack, there just wasn't a whole lot of support there once I started, you know, rolling around with my camper shell and extra gear in the back. So if you guys are considering wanting to do this upgrade, I think it's definitely a good investment. Anyway, hope that helped out. Hope that you guys are able to learn from the video. If you enjoyed it, please give me a thumbs up, subscribe, and also hit the notification bell. I have a lot more upgrades that are on the way, and I also just launched the new outdoor cooking series that I'll do, you know, whenever I can, where I'll be able to get outside, cook a little bit either on the Scottle or on my Camp Chef stove, or even both. There's some meals that I have planned that's going to require that I use both, because I have to cook multiple things at once in order to save some time. Go check that out. I already released one video so far using the Scottle for the first time. That's super cool. Anyway, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next one.